Now, I haven't made a video in a little while, and maybe I'm a little nervous. This is my second try of making this one. I am going to talk about a dynamic goal seek. And I think you perhaps may understand what a dynamic goal seek is. It's just a goal seek where you put in a function, a user-defined function, and then you don't have to press the data what-if analysis and put a target in and all that. You just make a little function that gives you a target and basically a target and the changing cell will be the function itself. And then you write some equations in a user-defined function and you get the answer, and then you don't have to do it manually. One of the big reasons you might want to do this, and this is in a context of project finance, the reason you might want to do this is because you might want to change the DSCR. And then after you change the DSCR, you want to run some sort of target equity IRR. Now, this isn't all set up to do it, but the dynamic goal seek is all ready. And let's show you specifically why you'd need this. Now, this is level repayment is true, and otherwise sculpting is false. So you might want, for some reason, and there's certainly some theory around this. It made a true and a false because it found this whatever. I don't know. That's fine. I'll leave it red. It found a false, and that's what made it doing that. What a stupid start to the video. I'm keeping going because I've tried this before. Now, what you can do then is, if it's not sculpting year by year, where you can use a nice elegant equation, the problem, if it's a level repayment, and the level repayment in this case, I didn't sculpt in the first year, I didn't find it in the first year, I just wanted to find the minimum here, and we find a minimum of 1.5. Let's say our target DSCR is 1.3. Okay, then it'll find the number of debt, the amount of debt that just gets you to 1.3. I hope you can see that that's a lot easier, and a lot can be very, very, very useful when you're trying to construct, when you're trying to do another goal seek to derive the level of debt or something like that. Now, so I thought, when I made this, I thought, this is going to be no big problem. I must have some kind of generic dynamic goal seeks, at least to provide a starting point. I haven't done this for a while, so let's see if we can't kind of figure this out. And then I looked around and I had something way too complicated. So I'm going to do something simple. Let's say we have the number 2, and I want to take the target is 2. I think, I'm sorry, let's make the target 4. I think 2 plus 2 equals 4. Notice how I have a tiny little bit of a difference that's kind of embarrassing. I'll explain that. That's kind of like a goal seek convergence. Okay, or if I want 5, I think 3 plus 5, the target is, the goal seek is 3. And this thing, it found, in this case, we made, of course, I could have put 5 minus 2 is 3, okay, that I could have done, but I'm trying to show you the most simple example I could kind of construct to get this working, okay? And then I'm going to try to show you this. Now, this is very similar. I think I started the video by saying I'm trying to make some issues. I'm trying to make some generic or template kind of files to evaluate and to solve the circular reference problems with a goal seek. Not with the goal seek, with a user-defined functions. Oh my gosh. Okay, and if I put 65.4322, it's going to figure out that that's going to be 63.4. It's going to do the goal seek. Or if I put 1,000 in, it still should work. Okay, or I put 932.442. Okay, it just does the goal seek each time. Now in a minute, I'm going to do almost the same thing with a simple little function, and in this case I put some CFADS, cash flow available for debt service, that extends past the tenor of the debt, so we put a 7-year tenor, how about 12-year tenor, and then we put a target DSCR of 1.4, and it backs into the debt. And when it did this, it successfully figured out that that's the minimum. In fact, I should have maybe done a little conditional formatting to do this, to show you this, but I'm not going to. I'm going to focus on showing you how you can do this one. And here's the function this time. I call it a level payment, and we take the CFADS, take the switch, take, E3 is the target DSCR, take row 8, CFADS, row 10 is the switch, and E4 is the interest rate. And you just do that, and you get the answer. Okay? And we can change the interest rate, and we'll just always get the answer that gives us the DSCR where the payment is level over time. Okay? So these are two. This example is supposed to be the simplest. Okay? I'm not sure it really is, actually, when you really go through it. Now let's press alternate and F8 and look at this. Okay, and here's the function. I called it a basic example. All right, and the first thing I did in the function was make it a variant. The reason I made it a variant, and I'm going to go through a series of videos on resolving circular references with different debt tranches, with senior sub-debt, with different interest rates, all of this sort of thing, and my big objective is to show you and make it easy and doable for you. I had a big discussion, which was, about this the other day. People are actually really wonderful. Now, then, if we have this variant, we want to put more outputs than just one. So I'm going to put it in one column, one across a row in 4 different columns. Instead of just putting one output, which will be, in this case, what 2 plus 2 is, I'm also going to see, well, how long does it take us to get there? That's the count. What's the increment we used in the last thing, and what's the difference? I'll explain this in a minute. Now, the key to doing this is to get the first value. When I say first value, this is over here. This is what we're changing. We're changing this first value and adding 2 to it to get a target. All right? Now, the way we're going to do this is use a step. We're going to use a step in a for loop, and then go around, and I said, maybe I'll just put go around, until, go around for the cell that is going to be changed. So this thing, we go around and around it. I don't know if you've noticed, but this is the changed cell, or this is the number 1, really. This is the count. This is the difference when we've finished. And this is the last increment we made. Now, the last increment, you see, got really, really small. Okay? And the idea is to go around until you change this number, until you hit this target. you try 1. Well, the target will be minus, the target will be 932, and the difference will be a big negative number if we take the answer we just computed, 1 plus 1 is 2, 3, 1 plus 2 is 3, minus 932, that's a big negative number. And then as soon as we hit a positive number, we say, oh no, we hit a positive number. Maybe it's 900 and whatever, 934 or something like that. I should know that immediately. And then we say, oh no, we hit 934. Let's then go back to the last one we had, subtract whatever we did in the prior one, and let's go around again. But this time it'll be a much more fine loop. And what we do is we just change the loop. There's probably some kind of name for this, algorithm. But I don't know it, because I never really studied it. So what we do is we loop around, and that's first value. That's the value we're changing. Maybe I should put changed cell here. Okay. In fact, I'm going to do this, Control F, and I'm going to change the first value to changing cell. So it kind of looks more like a goal seek. Okay. Made 6 different replacements. Okay, so we put our second value in, which we need for the equation. That's our number 2, really. And our target, I think that's like a goal seek. Our target is 932 or something. And then here's the general process. We say, let's take our changing cell and start with some number. What to start with is a big deal. And then finish some number. So let's say the changing cell is, let's say the start number is 0, and the finish is 2 times the target. So that's 932 times 2, or whatever, 1,800 something, or 900, whatever it is, 1,900. We go from 0 to 100,900, and then we have some kind of increment. And then we compute, we do all our calculations. Okay, this is calculation to get the goal seek. Now that could be, here's the problem with this could be the whole model. It could be 50 different equations. In the other one, it's going to be, we're going to have to compute the DSCR and then the minimum DSCR. That's the painful part of this. It's kind of like putting all the equations for circular reference. Okay, so that's kind of similar. And then we take the difference, and I think we did something similar in a circular reference almost. But we take the target, which is 932, minus the answer, which was 0 at first, or 2 at first, and then 3 or 4, whatever, it keeps going. So this difference gets smaller and smaller. And then when this difference is below 0, and you have to understand when it's below 0 or not below 0, then you say, well, if this difference is bigger, the absolute value, at least, of this difference is bigger than some really small number. That's why we got 0.002. We could put a whole bunch of more zeros here. Then go up and change the start value. Now, this is the only trick. The start value is whatever cell we're on, but then we want to go backwards because we've overshot it. So take away the increment. Subtract what increment you had, and then you're left with kind of the number before. And then the finish is just the cell we're on. So this is our new start and our new finish. That's the big deal here. This is the new start, and this is the new finish. And the only trick then is to say, let's put a new increment in. And this could be really a small increment. I said, let's divide it by 100. Depends on how big the original one was. And then the key is to go to the restart. Now, this key is this restart, it must be after the initial values. Okay, that's the key. And then you're going to, then you will, okay, then redo loop with new start, finish, and increment. Okay? And then once we have that, then I'm also going to make a counter. A counter is key here. We start with the counter of 1, and then we just keep counting every time we go through this loop. And this time I said, well, you know, if you hit more than, I really should stop at 1,000 here probably. Let's do it 5,000. If you stop there, it's just going to almost crash Excel. You can get into infinite loops way too easily for this. If we made the difference greater than 0, it might not work. If we set the increment wrong, it might not work. So I think putting a test is really important. Now, once you do that one, let's say that we get a difference of smaller than 0, but the absolute value not being above this is less than or equal to this. That means we can stop. And when we stop, we just first put the output. That's the changing cell. Now I put plus increment times 0 because I was worried if you should you should go back to the last one, but it turns out it doesn't really make any difference because by the time you get here, the increment is tiny, tiny, tiny. And then you just count how many times you've done it and put an increment, and then I put the difference. These could be any variables. And then the key thing is, if you have a user-defined function, the name of the function must be defined. That's the output. And if you never get here, okay, then you can exit the function. You better make sure and put a loop in here, okay? Now, okay, so now once we've done this, let's say this is 3,000.3211, okay? And then we get the right kind of answer, okay? And that this is this one, and since it's an array loop, you select the area, press F2, Shift, Control, Enter. You have to get used to this. F2, Shift, Control, Enter. Okay? And this one took 1,000 counts because it was so big. And I was a little inefficient the way I started this thing, and I was trying to really struggle with this, but I thought, oh, let's just make a video about it. Okay, now let's go to our debt size example, because this is so much more real. And in the debt size example, here's what I want to do. A lot of times when you do this, instead of having a very simple 1 plus 1 equals 2 kind of example, you might have a compute a DSCR, and then you have to take the minimum DSCR, and essentially what you have to do is go around and try this. You can start with a debt of 0. Now, when you get a debt of 0, the DSCR might be infinite. It might be really high. You've got to be careful with a divide by 0. This is the minimum right here. This is just the minimum. So this shows you that it works. Okay, and you're going to go around this debt and start with 0 and then go through increments. And the first time you might just increment it by 1 or something. Simple. And then you'll go through more. Now, when you go through these equations, we have to loop and just stop the loop when the true and false stops. So we need this kind of generic finding how to go across, because when we do this, I want to click on the entire column. I want to be lazy. I don't want you to have to put change the number of trues or false and all this. What a pain that would be. Okay, so Shift, Control, Enter again. So let's see how this one looks. You press alternate F8, and you look at this now. What I did here was I started with our not famous really, our read array function. And that read array function has a time switch. I put a DSCR and CFADS. Did I? Yes. And then I said, okay, well, just do the same thing, use a variant and as variant. But here's the big difference. We go across all the columns, or 1,000 columns, excuse me. We go around 1,000 columns and we say when we hit true, now be really careful, if you have a 0, 1 instead of true and false, you're going to have to change this true to be a 0. And then, after you found, now go around until you find the first true. When you found the first true, that means you've found the starting column. And then you exit the 4, so then you're finished. And then you go from the second column, not the first, and here's why you have to go through the second column. If the prior column was true, and this current column is false, that means it's 1 after the end column. So you put the end column minus 1. And then you just go round and around until you've finished this whole thing. Okay? And then you can put some out numbers and everything else. Now, I haven't done any dynamic goal seek here. All I've done is made a generic process so you can just, whenever you have a loop, you can just read this thing in. Now, when we go to the level payment function, we'll read the time switch, the true and false. We'll put a DSCR target in here. We'll put the CFADS as an array, and we'll put the interest rate in, which could be an array. In this case, it's a single number because the interest rate doesn't change, but if it was an array, in fact, in that other example, it was an array. Okay? Now, after you do that, you first do exactly what we just said. You find the start and the end column from the time switch. Then we know that the DSCR, we want to take the minimum DSCR. So I go around and I first made a dimensioned variable. This business of what's an array variable and what's a scalar variable or a fixed variable or whatever you want to call it is enormous. This one, the reason we need the DSCR by period is that we're going to have to compute the minimum DSCR. And once we have the minimum DSCR, we're going to keep pushing the debt up and up and up and up and up until this minimum DSCR hits our target DSCR. Okay? And so what we do is we just say, oh, let's first find just kind of how much is the maximum debt we could have. If the interest rate was 0, then our debt may be the CFADS because and our DSCR was 1. So that's the maximum we could have. Now I did a trick on the tenor. I said, let's use a COUNTIF. Just like Excel, you put worksheet function and you count how many time switches are, and when the time switches are true, that's the tenor of the debt. That was a little trick. You could have kind of put it in, but I'm a little trying to make you limit the number of variables. And then you say, let's start with this end value and start value. So my start value, maybe I should have kind of put the start and the end here. Our start value is 0. Our end value is this maximum debt. And now the increment, I just said, let's go up by 100. I mean, let's take the start minus the end and divide it by 100. Whatever that is, and just go around. I had much less problem here. And then put a count in so we don't exceed this. And this is our restart variable. Just like before, this is after after minimum DSCR is below target, redo the loop with new start, start, finish, and increment. It's the start, what we're looking for is the debt. And we go from the start debt to the end debt. This end debt was a really high number. The start debt was 0. Can't have negative debt, I assume. And then we have an increment. And then here's one of the keys. Just like the circular reference, you start with a debt balance, and that debt balance equals this target debt. But be really careful. And then the tenor, we make sure the tenor is not equal to 0, and we say we've got a level repayment. It's just our debt divided by the tenor. Now that's not the same as the debt balance. because the debt balance goes down and the interest goes down, and that affects the DSCR. So we start with our opening balance. I used to put opening and closing balance here, and that was really bad. Our interest is just, we start with our total debt balance before we've paid anything off. That's our first interest payment. And then we have a new debt balance equals the prior debt balance we have minus the repayment. And our total debt service is the interest plus the repayment. Pretty simple, huh? You could put all sorts of tax calculations, NOL calculations, interest income calculations. You could go through so many different kind of calculations to get here, particularly if this CFADS is a function of taxes and everything else. This was meant to be simple. You just add in all the equations here, just like we do with a circular reference. And then you say, well, as long as this debt service is not some really, really small number, then compute the DSCR. And the very first time, it will be some crazy big number because the debt will be really, really small. Okay? Maybe you could even, kind of done this. Now, if you didn't compute the debt service, then you're back up to this thing where we define the DSCR by period is 1,000. Okay. Now, once we've made it through the loop, we compute the minimum DSCR, and that's just a minimum function in Excel, worksheet function.min. I didn't say that enough, but you just can use most functions, not all, because some functions in VBA are not repeated for some reason. And that DSCR period is an array. So it just finds the minimum of the whole thing. And then the difference, just like we had in our simple example, is the a minimum DSCR we just computed minus the DSCR. Now, we're going to start with a really high one, and then it's going to go down. So we find when the difference is less than 0. And I can tell you from horror stories that deciding when it's going down versus when it's going up, if we put a difference of greater than 0, we get some horrible loop. And then if the difference is also pretty big, then we're going to go and try it again. And it's almost the same thing. We put the start debt is the debt minus the increment. You go backwards. Our increment is what we have here. We increase the increment, so we go backwards. And then the end debt is the current debt. And the difference is the end debt minus the start debt divided by 1,000. And then once you're finished with that, you go up to this restart. And you redo it again. And then you go until the difference is, again, less than 0, but the absolute value is less than or equal to some really small number, and then you exit. And when you've exited, the good news is you've got the debt. Now, I suppose I should put the, excuse me for this, I think I should put this in the loop. Here's why, because otherwise I don't think we'll count how many times we've done it correctly. Okay, we can look at what the maximum debt is. Watch me have screwed the whole thing up. Okay, so this took 100. No, this was this last one, the account. I think it was. And that's pretty bad. It took 111 iterations to figure this out. It doesn't look like much. Oh, I can remember when in the old days it would have taken forever. Okay, and we can change this to 2.2 and everything else. And that's a dynamic goal seek. Now, what I'm going to do is put this on the website. This is a big decision for me. Just a minute. Okay, and just let me pause. Okay, I was struggling with where to put it. This thing that says interpolate function, which isn't implemented yet, it's related. I'm going to put user-defined functions, interpolate, and dynamic goal seek. I'm going to have to change this, and I'm going to put it right here. I'm sorry, it's right there. I promised to put it there, and if you are really crazy and send, but I'm gonna keep my templates as simple as possible. So here is the idea. I should have really finished this by now. But the idea is you take one of these things, perhaps it's the really simple 1 plus 1 equals 2. That's almost a template you can use if you're not going through a loop. But if you're going through a loop, the idea is to use this read array function, and or you could even use this one if it's similar to this, and just expand that. And that's precisely what I did in that other file I just showed you. So the idea is to give you a set of, I'm very reluctant to call them templates. I want to call them kind of guidelines and things you can use to remove some of the really painful stuff about this. Remove this kind of going around and finding the start column, the end column, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, that's that.